So to Sarah, we were discussing how do you convince readers to try something that crosses genre lines and isn't quite the same as your typical romance or fantasy or whatever type of novel it is that you write.
Well, I've found that a lot of people don't really keep track of genres unless they're really like hardcore readers in a specific genre. So I really try and focus more on selling the specifics of my book rather than, essentially selling my book as an aspect of one genre or another. So again, I kind of slide around the genre thing as a whole and just focus on the aspects of the story that I've written as something that they might want to read. So
let's talk about us as readers, because usually authors are also readers. Is there an author that you've read that you love or have recommended to other people who has done a great job of treading sort of in between, or has found success with novels that don't conform to standard genres? I'm going to say one of my favorites is indie author Gail Carriger. She writes the Parasol Protectorate series, and it's steampunk, which is actually a small but growing genre. And she has done so well in combining steampunk, which is science fiction, and all of the different technology with paranormal, and she has vampires and werewolves in her series as well. So she has managed to make a large, and I'm going to put this in quotes, cult following off of this mixture of genres that really wasn't seen before, but now people are really clamoring to get. Are there authors that you know or that you admire, books that you love that do the same thing?
One of my day jobs, I'm a creative writing teacher, but I'm also an editor. And so a lot of the books I end up reading are indie books that I'm helping edit. I don't have a lot of time for free reading, sadly. But one of my favorite authors that sort of does that recently is Katrina Monroe. And she is the type of author who is all over the place, frankly, where all her books have a great sense of humor, but she has one that is sort of paranormal, urban fantasy, and one that she has coming out is sort of dark fairy tale retelling, a sort of Peter Pan retelling. And it's so great where she has an follow, but it's just whatever story obviously comes to mind. And it's really nice where if you are one of those people who finds an author and just wants to read everything they ever wrote, that you can be all over all sorts of stories so you don't get bored.
Okay, well, I fear I'm going to age myself a bit, but one of the writers that influenced me a great deal, still living and writing, 40 years ago, Rodolfo Anaya, a New Mexico author and probably the best-selling Hispanic author in the United States. And his first story called Bless Me Ultima, which was set in New Mexico. And it was a coming-of-age story. So as I started reading the story, it was pretty much what I would expect of that type of story. A young boy growing up, and he's kind of learning about life, and he has friends, and there's elements of comedy, etc. And then there's these very unusual elements came into it that I would at that time call fantasy, but now is called magical realism. And it had spiritual elements to it and so on, and it mixed the culture of the past, something very magical, and I was just transformed by reading that, and I thought, wow, that is cool. I was still mainly interested in traditional fantasy, but that gave me a new perspective, what could be done. And then I came up with my idea of taking a traditional fantasy story and then putting it in that setting, and then bringing in some of the magical realism elements between this world and this other alternative world. And so that's kind of what influenced me a great deal. And now I understand there's a great deal of that kind of writing by many authors from many different cultures and walks of life.
I would have to say that there are actually two that. First is Terry Pratchett, who did sword and sorcery fantasy, did this ironic fantasy, and ironic, and just kind of whatever he wanted to do, and it was great. The other one is, and I'm going to give myself away, I have an addiction to romance novels, and that's one of the few genres that I will hardcore follow an author, because I have a particular love of Christine Feehan with her Carpathian series, which I think is brilliant. It's not that romancy, and I love that. It's like the subgenre of the overall plot is almost more important than the specific romances of each book, and I love that. So
with you there on the romance novels. I think it's easier, maybe, or more prevalent for romance fans to hardcore follow an author. I know that my favorite romance authors, I've read every book that they put out. And like Nalini Singh is my absolute favorite, Sherilyn Kenyon, Gina Showalter, absolutely adore them and will pick up any book that they put out because I know that they're going to be stellar and they're going to have all those things about them that I love. And the same can't be said for other authors. I enjoy Stephen King's Dark Tower series, but I don't read his horror. I enjoy some Dean Koontz novels more than others. And so when it comes to other types of fiction, I don't find that hardcore fandom quite so much as I do in romance genres. One thing I want to talk about is, of course, we're all authors and we all have plot bunnies and stories that are sitting in the back of our heads, but tell me about the story or that book or that novel that you want to write, but is probably held back or something is holding you back from that novel, whether it's so far outside of whatever else is popular right now, or is it the fact that, you need to learn a little bit more in the storytelling area before you get, have your ability to do that well. And I will tell you that for me, I have a novel that I have wanted to write forever, and I know for a fact readers will hate the ending, but they will say it couldn't have ended any other way if I could write it appropriately. And that the only thing that's holding me back is I would want to be able to do that sort of emotionally debilitating story justice. And so I need a little bit more time to hone my craft before I get started on something like that. Is there a story that you guys deep down really want to tell and something has been holding you back all this time? Or are you just a go-getter, renegade, do what you want to do and get it out there kind of writer?
Well, right now, the main thing that's holding me back from other books is I am deep in the mires of a series, and so I am almost done with book 3. There's at least going to be a book 4, and I feel like that's sort of all-encompassing right now, which I go through stages of either loving it or hating it based on how long I've been staring at the same passage. And so once I get past that, I feel like there will be more freedom again. So what I have next up on my docket is, like I said, I've been sort of treading, thinking, doing true historical fiction, but it's in my brain going, should I gear it more romance? Should I make it more true historical fiction? If it is true historical fiction, what is the plot actually going to be? Because it's not about the two characters if it's not a romance, or at least it's not entirely about those two characters. And so that has been churning in my brain for quite some time now, and maybe I'll eventually get around to it once I figure out what the actual plot is and I'm done with my series.
Yeah, for me, as a junior high boy, I just love those science fiction stories. And unfortunately, when I tried to write them, I found that almost every idea had already been done. It's already been done. It's like dead in the water. And so since I didn't have a science background, but just a love of science and science fiction, I always found that difficult to break into. So I thought, well, what else do I like that's in the ballpark? And I thought, okay, fantasy, because there you can create your own world, make up your own rules. You don't have to follow, any of the science fiction tropes that have become so, even, though there are probably a lot of renegade writers in science fiction, still I wanted to do something that was going to be fresh. So I have this idea I've been working on where I'm going to try to take every idea I've ever had on a science fiction story and put it all into one big space romp and make it into a satire. And maybe that way then I don't have to be taken seriously for the hard science and just have fun with the satire. But I don't know if I have the nerve, because already I'm thinking kind of like Jessica is, of the next thing I'm going to be doing, which will probably be a prequel series to the series I just finished.
I have 2 books that I'm very, very happy that I have the ideas for, and very, very intimidated because mid-grade novels, and for some reason those 2 just, I don't know, I'm so tense about it. It's like, well, I want to write about these teenagers that they're going to have so much fun, but I don't know if I can do it. So that's the age group thing is really kind of intimidating for me, which is ironic because I do adult stuff fine, and I do like young kid, essentially toddler preschool type stuff. That's fine, but middle grade, those people are harsh.
It's all good. I'm also scared of middle grade, where I'm okay with young adult, but anything younger than that, I teach kids younger than that, because some of my class, I have no idea how to actually do a good mid-grade book.
Yeah.
It's one thing to tell them what they have to learn, but it's another thing to try to entice them with a story. I identify completely.
Oh yeah.
But let the middle schoolers know that we're terrified of them.
Nothing.
I know that a couple of us here are small press, and we have independent press, and we have indie writers. Let's talk about the future of writing in general. Where do you see publishing going in the next 10 to 15 years? Are you looking at the big 5 slowly fading away and the world becoming an indie author playground? Do you think that it's going to be small press fun for everyone? Or are we looking at a happy medium sometime, somewhere? And we all know that people aren't happy with, traditional publisher contracts, and we're all learning as authors more the business side of the business of writing. At least I know I have, since I've started my publishing journey. I've learned a lot more about the business side, marketing, promotion, where to spend money, what works and what doesn't, and all of those things is part of, becoming a successful author. Where do you see that going in the next 10 to 15 years? Do you see a resurgence of traditional publishing? Do you think indie authors are going to, go to the moon, or what is your view on what's going to happen?
I think that, you're going to see a lot of millennial influence. We've been kind of getting kicked around the last couple of decades as authors, and I think that there's going to be a lot of rebellion about that. I think that the readers are going to kind of relax back from the whole, we can buy everything on ebook, kind of thing, where we had such an inundation of so many things, and they're going to start. And I think authors are going to start taking back their power as the creators of really good books.
Yeah, I agree with Sarah. I think where we're going is just where anything will go. There'll be, the independent author publisher, already is a reality to a certain extent, and I think it will become more effective as some of us we are all kind of starting from scratch. My idea was, okay, you write a book, you send it off. If they publish it, then everything's taken care of. And then you just ask them, well, when do I show up for signings? Well, it doesn't work that way anymore. You're your one-man show, one-woman show. And I think we're going to see a lot of that. I think there'll still be room for the big major publishers. Maybe there'll just be one big major publisher, because we all want to sell millions of books and not just hundreds or dozens. And so I think there'll be a place for that, and none of us individually have the economic power to make that happen. But it's going to be only one part of a huge picture.
Yeah, just from knowing what's going on, we're working very closely with my small press. I'm sort of abreast to knowing that a couple of really small publishers have failed recently, even well-known names, and knowing how the big five are now they're merging, and there's a lot of change in general. My feeling is that there's going to be some, I don't know if I'd call it a showdown, but something between the big five and Amazon, because Amazon is trying to put its thumb on the middle of everything. And so there will sort of be this bigger clash, and then under it will be the smaller presses and the indie authors. And as people become more and more, I'd almost say committed to the ebooks and to indie publishing, it'll become way of getting books out than, hey, look, we can do an ebook. I'm going to slap my first draft up there because I can put it on. And more people are realizing how damaging that is as a mechanism, where you need to have professional books out, no matter where you are on the spectrum. If you're a small press, they need to be just as professional as HarperCollins. If you're doing it all yourselves, you also need to be your own publisher and really professional. And as that level rises, I think you will have this sort of monolithic battle at the very top, and then everyone else rising to the challenge.
I agree.
I forgot what I was going to say. Let's talk about, I had a person ask me recently, do I consider myself an artist? And her question was, when I'm writing a story or a novel, what do I most want to convey to my readers as an author? And her idea was that every author has a significant or very personal message that they try to convey in every story. And she was asking me basically, do I know what I wanted to say to readers? And as an adventure romance novelist, I guess my broad, message for readers is that life is hard, nothing is easy, and, there is a long, bumpy road between Once Upon a Time and Happily Ever After. And what is your message to readers? What do you want readers to take away from your novels when they read your words?
Well, for me, it's a matter of perception. In fact, that's the kind of basis of my whole series that I've just completed, is that everything that you see and that you experience is a matter of perception through your own senses, the five senses, and then how your brain processes it. And because of that, then that allows me to throw quite a few curves and surprise readers quite a bit. And there's one little surprise at the end of my first book. And I just love it when people tell me, man, you had me going. I had no idea that was coming. And so I thought that's great, because now with all the brain research that's going on and all of the things that we're learning about how our minds work, it's all about perception. And so I kind of hit on that just as a story device, but it's become kind of almost a mission now, and I have a feeling that many of my future things will still hinge on that process. And of course, there's all the traditional good and love conquers all and all of that that's in there too. But
for me, I have a historian husband, so between me writing historical books and he always having an opinion about, he's all over the place and just brilliant, honestly. And he's not paying me to say that or have a gun to my head at the moment. But he has this idea that I think actually really suits what I'm trying to do, which is you're having this struggle whenever anyone does a historical piece. How different are people from you in the past, and how similar? And so I really like playing with that, where you have characters who, while having very modern emotions and things happening to them, they also are, and when it comes to fantasy, because you have however you structured your world. And so I like that feeling of there are these people who are so different from me, and yet they're that, and what is the heart of human emotion and what is societal, and it's a lot of fun to play with, even if you've got to tread carefully sometimes when it comes to just how different the views are and if that is politically acceptable. Where I take that, I try not to be too PC, but if it's, I don't want it also to seem like it's glorifying anything that shouldn't be, even though it wouldn't be a problem in the past.
I'd say that mine is probably that most of my protagonists are more or less normal people who get thrust into really weird situations, and even though they're fighting these massive things, their biggest conflict is with their own confidence, with their own self-worth, with up. And a lot of times they're not even required to do anything spectacular. All they have to do is survive. And so I'd say that my message is about muddy places inside your own head and coming out and just be like, I'm still here and I'm still okay, and we're all like that. We all have that aspect to us.
In our last few minutes, I would like everybody to talk about what their current work in progress is. When do you expect it to be out? What, is it part of a series? What are you working on right now that readers can look forward to? Tell us a little bit about it, what genre it is. Just give us a little bit of insight.
Well, like I said, I'm currently in the midst of a series. It's called the Order and Chaos series, and is historical fantasy based vaguely around Renaissance Italy. And book 1 came out this past November. Book 2 is currently in line editing and should be out sometime in the fall. And I am trying to power through book 3, which is kicking my butt at the moment. And so there's at least one more, which is book 4, and after that, I'm not sure where it's going. I think it's going to wrap up there, but who knows? I may pull a George R. R. Martin and things just keep
Well, I just finished the 3rd book in my series, which is, I've been hinting at it along the line, where I have an extremely reluctant hero, in fact, downright antagonistic and apathetic, driven into this situation that he doesn't want to be in this alternative world. And I have ended that now, but the book itself has not been published yet. In fact, I'm still kind of waiting for the proofs from the publisher so I can see how it all lays out, catch a few more errors in case there's any of them that show up, and then approve the final cover. From there, possibly doing a prequel series that what came before all of this story happened, and many other projects, but that's right now what I'm thinking about. And possibly even, believe it or not, a romance from a guy's point of view. Since other people have been talking about romances, I thought that might be kind of fun to do, and so on. I already have an idea. I just don't know if I have the courage to write it.
Join us. You can do it.
I will.
I actually just recently got the publishing contract for my first in the series, for the Runespell series. So Too Weird will be out in September is when they're shooting for. And in the meantime, I'm probably going to be working on book 2 of that series. and there's a couple other works in progress that I may just kind of play around with during that time period. Because, I mean, really, who is an author that doesn't have like 12 works in progress in some stage or another?
Exactly. I even have a cookbook in progress based on some things that are mentioned in my stories, and I thought, well, that'd be fun because I know a lady who's a cook and a home economic teacher, so she's helping me with that.
Awesome. Cookbook. I guess I'm one of those people who has multiple works in progress at one time, but I have a cyberpunk version of Dorian Gray that I'm working on for Writer Punk Press anthology that we're going to do. And I have been working on a novel that is termed Future Punk. And it's very emotionally charged. So once I write on it for a while, I have to stop and kind of rebuild up my steam to get going again. My hero is also a reluctant hero. He's kind of a jackass. But I mean, he's very important to the story, but he is thrust into a situation he wishes never would have happened, and he is parted from his most beloved person. And though they are equally at fault for what happened, he follows after her to this place where she goes, which is far, far into the future. So my characters spend the first 2/3 of the book apart, but longing to be together and trying to come back together. So I'm currently working on that, and I'm about 2/3 through, so we'll see how that goes. I'm hoping for December of this year. But all in all, I just had my second magical steampunk novel release and really enjoyed that genre, so I'll probably dabble around in that a little bit more later. But that is our time, and we are finished for our panel on limits and liabilities. I will go around the room. If anybody has any parting remarks they'd like to say, we'll do that, and then we'll wrap up. And I would like to thank everyone for joining me today. It was a wonderful discussion.
Well, yes, thank you for having us, and thank you to whoever ends up watching us talk about it. I think everything was really interesting. So I hope everyone enjoys it as much as I did.
Yes, and thank you, Amy, for hosting us, and excellent questions. I think we had we're probably all very polite and not interrupting each other and so on, and maybe if we were all in the same room, it might have been a different story, kind of like presidential debates or something. Hopefully not. And so anyway, thank you very much. Enjoyed it, and hope you give my stories a chance, anybody that's listening in.
Well, to reiterate what Jessica and RJ have said, a lot of really good aspects of publishing and genre touched on, and I've really enjoyed talking to you guys, and hope we can do it again sometime. And thank you, Amy.
You've been wonderful panelists, and I believe our discussion on limits and liabilities, writing to or against reader and genre expectation was quite informative. Everybody has really good opinions and ideas. And I think we're all on the same page about where publishing is going. No matter what happens, we will all keep writing because that's what writers do. And I am going to say thank you to all of the participants in the virtual FantasyCon 2016. We look forward to interacting and chatting with you in October when the con begins. And for now, we're going to end our recording, and we will see you all next time. Thank you.